When my father laughed at me and said, "We're not your nannies," I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just smiled and said four words that changed everything. Then pay your mortgage. The silence that followed. That was the sound of 20 years of taking me for granted, crashing down. I never thought I would be the kind of daughter who says no to her parents. Growing up, I was taught that family comes first. Always, no matter what. My mother used to tell me, blood is thicker than water, Emma, never forget that. And I didn't. For 38 years, I lived by those words. I helped my parents whenever they needed me. I gave them money when they struggled. I sat with them during hard times. I celebrated with them during good times. I thought that's what love looked like. I thought that's what being a good daughter meant. But somewhere along the way, I stopped asking myself a very important question. What about me? What about my life, my needs, my children? When my father laughed at me that cold November morning and said those words, something inside me finally woke up. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. And that clarity, as painful as it was, saved me. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how I got here. So you can see why that moment, that single sentence, became the line I could no longer cross. My name is Emma. I'm a single mother of two beautiful kids, Lily, who's 9, and Jacob, who's 7. Their father left us 4 years ago, just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation, no apology, just gone. I won't lie and say it didn't break me. It did. For months, I cried myself to sleep. I felt worthless. I felt abandoned. I questioned everything about myself. But then I looked at my children's faces, and I realized I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. They needed me, so I pulled myself together. I took on 2 jobs. I worked as a school administrator during the day and did freelance bookkeeping at night. I was exhausted all the time, but I was surviving. More than that, I was proud. I was taking care of my kids. I was paying my bills. I was standing on my own 2 feet. And my parents, they were proud too. At least, that's what they said. My father would pat me on the back and say, "That's my girl, strong like her old man." My mother would hug me and say, "You're doing so well, sweetheart. We always knew you were capable." I believed them. I thought they saw me. I thought they understood how hard I was working. But looking back now, I realized they only saw what I could do for them, not who I was, not what I needed. My parents, Robert and Helen, are both in their early 60s. They're not sick. They're not disabled. They're perfectly healthy. My father retired from his job at the post office 3 years ago, and my mother never worked outside the home. They live in a nice house in the suburbs, a house I helped them buy. Yes, you heard that right. I helped them buy their home. 10 years ago, when they were struggling financially, I co-signed the mortgage. I was young, optimistic, and I wanted to help. I thought it was the right thing to do. They promised they'd handle the payments. They promised it wouldn't affect me. And for a while it didn't, but over the years, things changed. My father's spending habits got worse. He bought things they didn't need: a new car, expensive furniture, vacations to places they'd always wanted to see. And slowly the mortgage payments started to slip. At first it was just one late payment. Then 2, then more. I started getting calls from the bank, letters in the mail, warnings about missed payments. I confronted my parents, and they always had an excuse. "We'll catch up next month. We had some unexpected expenses. Don't worry, Emma, we've got it under control." But they didn't. And because my name was on that mortgage, it was affecting my credit, my financial stability, my future. Still, I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to be the ungrateful daughter who demands her money back. So I kept quiet. I kept helping. I kept believing that things would get better. They didn't. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. My son Jacob got sick, really sick. He had pneumonia and ended up in the hospital for a week. I had to take time off work. I had to pay medical bills that my insurance didn't cover. I was drowning in expenses and I needed help. Not a lot. Just someone to watch Lily while I stayed at the hospital with Jacob. Just someone to pick her up from school and make sure she had dinner. Just a little support. So I called my parents. I didn't ask them to move in. I didn't ask them to upend their lives. I just asked if they could help me for a few days. My mother sighed on the phone. Emma, we're retired, we've raised our kids, we're supposed to be enjoying our life now. I felt a sting in my chest, but I pushed it down. Mom, it's just for a few days, please, I really need you. She put my father on the phone, he was more direct. Emma, sweetheart, we love you, but we're not nannies. We're not babysitters, you're a grown woman. You need to figure this out. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. Dad, I'm not asking you to be a nanny, I'm asking you to help your granddaughter, just for a few days. He laughed, not a mean laugh, not a cruel laugh, just a dismissive, casual laugh, like I'd just asked him to do something ridiculous. We're not your nannies, Emma, you'll be fine, you always are. And then he hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream, I just felt empty. I called a neighbor. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who lived 2 doors down. She'd always been kind to my kids. I explained the situation, and without hesitation, she said yes. She took care of Lily, she made her meals. She helped her with homework. She gave her the love and support that my own parents wouldn't, and I was grateful. But I was also heartbroken, because in that moment, I realized something I'd been avoiding for years. My parents didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as a resource, someone who helped them, someone who gave to them, but when I needed something in return, I was asking too much. That realization sat with me for weeks. I didn't confront them, I didn't say anything, I just kept going. Jacob recovered. I went back to work. Life moved on. But something inside me had shifted. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way my father always had money for golf trips but never for the mortgage. The way my mother bought expensive clothes but complained when I couldn't lend her cash. The way they talked about their retirement like it was some sacred, untouchable thing, while I worked 2 jobs and barely slept. And then, last week, the bank called me again. The mortgage was 3 months behind. They were starting foreclosure proceedings. I felt panic rise in my chest. Foreclosure didn't just affect my parents. It affected me, my credit, my ability to get loans, my future. I drove to their house that same evening. I didn't call ahead, I just showed up. My father was watching TV. My mother was reading a magazine. They looked comfortable, relaxed, happy. I sat down across from them and said, "We need to talk about the mortgage." My father barely looked up from the television. He waved his hand like he was swatting away a fly. "Emma, we'll handle it. Don't worry so much. You're always worrying." I took a deep breath. I'd practiced this conversation in my head 100 times, but now that I was here, the words felt heavy in my throat. "Dad, the bank called me. You're 3 months behind. They're starting foreclosure. This isn't something you can just brush off." My mother finally looked up from her magazine. She didn't look concerned, she looked annoyed. "Emma, why are you getting so worked up? We've been late before, we always catch up." I felt my hands start to shake, not from anger, from exhaustion, from years of holding everything in. "Mom, this is different. This isn't just late, this is foreclosure. That means they're going to take the house. And because my name is on that mortgage, it destroys my credit too. Do you understand what that means?" My father muted the TV and finally turned to look at me. He had that expression on his face, the one he always wore when he thought I was overreacting. Calm, condescending, dismissive. "Emma, you're being dramatic. We're not going to lose the house. We just need a little more time. Things have been tight lately." I wanted to scream. I wanted to list all the ways things had been tight for me too. The hospital bills, the 2 jobs, the sleepless nights, the constant fear that one more expense would break me. But I didn't. I stayed calm, I stayed respectful, because that's what I'd been taught. "Dad, I can't keep doing this. I helped you buy this house because you promised you handle the payments, but you haven't. And now it's affecting me. It's affecting my kids. I need you to take this seriously." He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "What do you want us to do, Emma? We're retired. We're on a fixed income. We can't just pull money out of thin air." I felt something crack inside me. "You went on a cruise last month. You bought a new car last year. You go golfing every weekend. Don't tell me you don't have money." My mother's face tightened. "Emma, that's our money. We worked our whole lives. We deserve to enjoy our retirement." I stared at her, really stared at her. And for the first time I saw her clearly, not as my mother, not as the woman who raised me, but as someone who had convinced herself that her comfort mattered more than anyone else's. And I deserve to not have my credit destroyed because you can't budget. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't take them back. My father stood up. He wasn't angry, he was still calm, still in control. Emma, you need to calm down. You're upset. We'll figure this out. We always do. I shook my head. No, Dad, you always figure it out by relying on me. By expecting me to fix it. By assuming I'll just keep giving and never ask for anything back. He laughed again. That same laugh from the phone call, that casual, dismissive laugh that made me feel small. Come on, Emma. You're acting like we've been terrible parents. We've done a lot for you. We raised you. We supported you. And now you're throwing a tantrum because we need a little help. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to stay steady. A little help. Dad, I've been helping you for 10 years. I co-signed a mortgage I could barely afford. I've lent you money I needed for my own kids. I've covered bills. I've made excuses. And the one time I asked you to help me to just watch Lily for a few days while my son was in the hospital, you told me you weren't my nanny. The room went silent. My mother looked away. My father's smile faded just a little, but he didn't apologize. He didn't take it back, he just shrugged. Emma, that's different. We're old, we've earned our rest. You're young, you're strong, you can handle it. And that's when it happened. That's when everything I'd been holding in for years finally broke free. I looked at my father and said, then pay your own mortgage. He blinked. What? I repeated it, slower this time. If you're not going to help me, if you're going to keep spending your money on things you don't need while I'm drowning, then pay your own mortgage. I'm done. My mother stood up, her voice rising for the first time. Emma, you can't just walk away from this. Your name is on that mortgage. You're responsible. I nodded. I know, and I'll deal with the consequences, but I'm not going to keep pretending this is okay. I'm not going to keep sacrificing my future so you can live comfortably while ignoring me. My father's face finally showed something other than dismissiveness. It showed shock. You're really going to do this? You're going to abandon your own parents? I felt tears prick my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting a boundary, something I should have done a long time ago. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. My mother called after me. Emma, wait, let's talk about this. Don't leave like this. I stopped at the door and turned around. I've tried to talk for years, but you never listen. You just expect me to keep giving. Well, I'm done. I love you both, but I can't do this anymore. And I left. I walked out of that house and got into my car, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like a bad daughter. I felt free. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry. I just drove, feeling the weight of years of expectation finally lift off my shoulders. When I got home, Lily and Jacob were watching cartoons on the couch. They looked up when I walked in, their faces bright and happy. Mom, you're home. Jacob ran over and hugged me. I held him tight, breathing in the smell of his shampoo, feeling his small arms around my waist. This was what mattered. Not the mortgage, not my parents' approval, just this. My kids, my life, my peace. I sat down with them and watched cartoons, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. But I knew this wasn't over. I knew my parents wouldn't just accept what I'd said. I knew there would be fallout, and I was right. The next morning my phone started ringing. My mother. My father, over and over. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. I needed time to think, to process, to figure out what came next. By the afternoon my voicemail was full. Messages from my mother crying, saying I was breaking her heart. Messages from my father angry, saying I was being selfish and ungrateful. Messages from my aunt, my uncle, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, all telling me I needed to apologize, to fix this, to be a good daughter. I listened to every single one. And then I deleted them, because I realized something important. Being a good daughter didn't mean setting myself on fire to keep my parents warm. It didn't mean sacrificing my own children's future for their comfort. It didn't mean accepting disrespect and calling it love. I called my lawyer the next day. I explained the situation. I told him I wanted to remove my name from the mortgage, even if it meant financial consequences for me. He was honest. Emma, this is going to be complicated. Your credit will take a hit. There might be legal ramifications. Are you sure? I didn't hesitate. I'm sure. He started the paperwork, and I started the hardest chapter of my life. The days that followed were some of the loneliest I've ever experienced. It wasn't because I was physically alone. My kids were with me. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, checked in on me. My coworker, Sarah, brought me coffee and listened when I needed to talk. But emotionally, I felt like I was standing on an island, watching everyone I'd known my whole life turn their backs on me. My phone kept ringing. Not just my parents anymore. My entire extended family had somehow been pulled into this. My aunt called me selfish. My uncle told me I was throwing away my family over money. My cousin sent me a long text about how disappointed my grandmother would have been if she were still alive. Every message felt like a punch. Not because I thought they were right, but because I realized how deeply misunderstood I was. They didn't see the years of sacrifice. They didn't see the sleepless nights or the hospital bills or the 2 jobs. They just saw a daughter who said no. And in their eyes, that made me the villain. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to call each of them and explain, but I didn't, because I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd already decided who I was in this story, so I let them think what they wanted. I focused on what I could control. My lawyer worked quickly. Within 2 weeks, we had a plan. I would refinance the debt, taking full responsibility for a portion of it to protect my credit, while legally separating myself from my parents' financial obligations. It wasn't perfect. It cost me money I didn't have, but it was the cleanest way out. My lawyer warned me again. Emma, your parents are going to have to face the consequences of this. If they can't make the payments, they'll lose the house. Are you prepared for that? I nodded. I've been preparing for this my whole life. I just didn't know it. He gave me a sad smile. You're doing the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it. When the paperwork was finalized, I sent my parents a letter. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter. I wanted them to know I'd put thought into this, that it wasn't impulsive or emotional, that it was a decision I'd made with clarity and love. I wrote, Mom and Dad, I know you're angry with me. I know you think I'm being selfish, but I need you to understand something. I love you, I always have. I always will, but I can't keep sacrificing my children's future for yours. I can't keep pretending that it's okay for you to rely on me while dismissing me when I need you. I've spent years trying to be the daughter you wanted. The one who never says no. The one who always helps, but I've realized that version of me wasn't healthy. It wasn't fair, not to me, not to Lily and Jacob. I'm not abandoning you. I'm setting boundaries. I'm choosing my own family, my own life, and I hope one day you'll understand that. I hope one day we can rebuild our relationship on mutual respect, not expectation. I love you both. But I'm done carrying weight that isn't mine to carry. Take care of yourselves, Emma. I mailed the letter and waited. Days passed. No response. I didn't expect one. But part of me hoped. Then, 2 weeks later, my mother showed up at my door. I was making dinner when I heard the knock. Lily ran to answer it, and I heard her little voice say, Grandma. My heart sank. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. My mother stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. Lily hugged her and my mother smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Hi, sweetheart, she said to Lily. Then she looked at me. Can we talk? I nodded and told Lily to go play with Jacob. My mother stepped inside, and we sat down at the kitchen table. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. She stared at her hands. I waited. Finally, she said, Your father is furious. He won't even say your name. I didn't respond. She continued. The bank called again. They said we have 60 days to catch up on payments or they're moving forward with foreclosure. Your father thinks you should help us one more time. He thinks that's the right thing to do. I took a deep breath. And what do you think, Mom? She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something I hadn't seen before. Guilt. I think we took advantage of you. My throat tightened. She wiped her eyes. I didn't see it before, or maybe I did and I just didn't want to, but when I read your letter, Emma, I realized we've been asking you to carry us for years. And we never asked what it was costing you. I felt tears start to form, but I blinked them back. Mom, I just needed you to see me. Not as someone who could fix your problems, just as your daughter, as someone who needed support too. She nodded, crying now. I know, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We sat there, both of us crying, and for the first time in months, I felt a tiny bit of hope. But then she said, "Is there any way you can help us? Just one more time." And just like that, the hope cracked. I shook my head. "No, Mom, I can't." Her face fell. "But we'll lose the house." I reached across the table and took her hand. "Then you'll lose the house. And that's not my fault. It's not my responsibility. You and Dad made choices. You spent money you didn't have. You ignored the consequences. And now you have to face them. I can't save you from that." She pulled her hand back. "So you're just going to let us lose everything?" I felt a surge of frustration. "Mom, you're not losing everything. You're losing a house. You still have each other. You still have your health. You can downsize. Can rent, you can adjust, but I can't keep destroying my own life to protect yours." She stood up, her sadness turning to anger. "You've changed, Emma. You used to care about family." I stood up too. "I do care, but I've realized that family shouldn't mean self-destruction. It should mean love, support, respect, and you and Dad haven't given me that." She didn't say anything else. She just walked to the door, stopped, and looked back at me. "Your father was right. You're not the daughter we raised." And she left. I stood there, staring at the closed door, feeling like I'd just been punched in the chest. Lily came running back into the room. "Where did Grandma go?" I forced a smile. "She had to leave, sweetie." Lily frowned. "She didn't say goodbye." I knelt down and hugged her. "I know, baby. Sometimes grown-ups forget." That night I cried, not because I regretted my decision, but because I mourned the parents I wished I had, the ones who would have understood, the ones who would have apologized, the ones who would have chosen me. The weeks after my mother's visit were strange. I felt like I was living in two worlds. In one world, I was strong. I was standing up for myself. I was protecting my children and setting boundaries. In the other world, I was a villain, a daughter who turned her back on her parents, someone cold and selfish. The second world was louder. My phone stopped ringing as much, but the silence was worse than the calls. No one from my family reached out. Not to check on me. Not to ask how I was doing, just nothing. It was like I'd been erased. At first, I told myself I didn't care. I had my kids, I had my job, I had Mrs. Patterson and Sarah. I didn't need people who only valued me when I was useful. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep, I felt the weight of it. The loneliness. The rejection. The question that kept circling in my mind, did I do the right thing? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. I was picking up Lily from school when another mom, Jennifer, approached me. I knew her casually. We chatted at school events, but we weren't close. She smiled and said, "Hey Emma, do you have a minute?" I nodded, and we stepped aside while the kids played on the playground. Jennifer hesitated, then said, "I heard what happened with your parents." My stomach dropped. I didn't know how she'd heard. Small town, I guess. People talk. I braced myself for judgment. But instead, she said, "I just wanted to tell you I think you're brave." I blinked. "What?" She nodded. "I went through something similar with my in-laws. They expected us to fund their lifestyle while we were struggling, and I didn't have the courage to say no. I just kept giving until we were drowning in debt. My marriage almost didn't survive it. I didn't know what to say." She continued. "When I heard what you did, I thought, wow. She actually stood up for herself. And I admire that. I know it's hard. I know people are probably judging you, but you did the right thing." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." She gave me a hug, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel so alone. That conversation stayed with me. It reminded me that not everyone would see me as the villain, that somewhere out there people understood. Over the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding. Not my relationship with my parents. That was still broken, but my own sense of self. I started therapy. I found a counselor who specialized in family dynamics, and I talked. I talked about the guilt, the anger, the sadness, the fear that I'd made a terrible mistake. She listened without judgment. And then she said something that changed everything. "Emma, you spent your whole life trying to earn your parents' love. But love isn't something you earn. It's something you're given. And if they made you feel like you had to prove your worth, that's not love, that's control." I sat with those words for days. And slowly, I started to understand. My parents didn't withhold love because I wasn't enough. They withheld it because they wanted to keep me dependent. They wanted to keep me giving. And the moment I stopped, I became the enemy. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. I stopped checking my phone, hoping they'd call. I stopped writing imaginary letters in my head, trying to explain myself. I stopped waiting for them to see me because I finally saw myself, and I liked who I was. I was a mother who put her children first. I was a woman who worked hard and didn't give up. I was someone who had the courage to set boundaries, even when it cost me everything. Around this time, I also started to see the consequences of my decision play out. My parents' house went into foreclosure. I heard about it through my aunt, who called me one last time. "Emma, they're losing the house. Are you happy now?" I wasn't happy, but I wasn't guilty either. "Aunt Linda, I'm sorry they're going through this, but it's not my responsibility." She hung up on me. A few weeks later, I learned that my parents had moved into a small apartment across town. It wasn't the house they'd loved. It wasn't the life they'd imagined, but they were okay. They weren't homeless. They weren't starving. They were just adjusting. And I realized something important. They would survive. They'd survived before I came along. They'd survive after. Meanwhile, my own life was improving. The financial weight was lifting. I wasn't getting calls from the bank anymore. My credit was slowly recovering. I even managed to save a little money for the first time in years. Lily and Jacob noticed the change too. I was less stressed. I smiled more. I had energy to play with them, to read bedtime stories, to just be present. One night, Lily climbed into my lap and said, "Mom, are you happier now?" I kissed her forehead. "Yeah, baby, I think I am," she smiled. "Good, you deserve to be happy. Kids have a way of seeing things so clearly." Then 2 months after I'd walked out of my parents' house, I got a letter, not from my parents, from my father's brother, my Uncle Greg. I almost didn't open it. I assumed it would be another guilt trip, another lecture about family loyalty. But something made me read it. The letter said, "Emma, I'm writing because I think you deserve to know the truth. Your father called me last week, asking for money. He told me the same story he's been telling everyone, that you abandoned him, that you're selfish, that you ruined his life. But I didn't give him money, and I'll tell you why. Years ago, when you were just a kid, your father borrowed money from me. A lot of money. He promised he'd pay me back. He never did. Instead, he cut me out of his life when I asked for it. Called me greedy. He said I cared more about money than family. Sound familiar? Your father has a pattern, Emma. He takes from people, and when they stop giving, he makes them the villain. I didn't understand that until now. But hearing him talk about you the same way he talked about me, I realized he hasn't changed. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to carry guilt that isn't yours. You didn't ruin your father's life. He did that himself. I hope you're doing okay. You deserve better. Uncle Greg. I read that letter 3 times, and then I cried, not from sadness, from relief, because for the first time, someone from my family validated me. Someone saw the truth. I wrote back to Uncle Greg thanking him, and we started talking. Not often, just occasional emails. But it felt good to have one person in my family who understood. As the months passed, I stopped waiting for my parents to apologize. I stopped hoping they'd change. I accepted that they might never see me the way I wanted them to, and I made peace with that. Because I realized something powerful. I didn't need their approval to know my worth. I already knew it. Life settled into a new rhythm. The chaos of the past few months faded into something quieter, something steadier. I woke up each morning without that knot of anxiety in my stomach. I didn't dread checking my phone. I didn't feel like I was constantly bracing for the next crisis. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life, not just surviving someone else's expectations. Lily and Jacob thrived. Lily's grades improved. She joined the school choir and came home singing every day. Jacob, who'd been so sick just months before, was running around like nothing had ever been wrong. Watching them laugh and play, I knew I'd made the right choice. They deserved a mother who wasn't drowning. They deserved stability, and I was finally able to give them that. Work became easier too. I'd been so distracted before, so exhausted from carrying the weight of my parents' problems on top of everything else. But now I could focus. My boss even noticed. She pulled me aside one day and said, "Emma, I don't know what's changed, but you seem different lately." Lighter, I smiled. "I guess I am." She didn't ask for details and I didn't offer them. Some things are too personal to explain, but I appreciated her noticing. It reminded me that I was allowed to take up space. I was allowed to be seen. Mrs. Patterson became a close friend. She'd been a quiet support through everything, never asking for the full story, just offering help when I needed it. One Saturday afternoon, I brought Lily and Jacob over to her house for tea. She'd baked cookies, and the kids ran around her backyard while we sat on the porch. "You're doing really well, Emma," she said, watching the kids play. I nodded. "I'm trying." She looked at me with kind eyes. "You're not just trying, you're succeeding. I've watched you for years, and I've always admired how hard you work. But now you seem free." I felt my throat tight. It didn't feel like freedom at first, it felt like I was losing everything. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "Sometimes we have to lose the wrong things to make room for the right ones." I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. The wrong things. My parents' approval. The exhausting cycle of giving without receiving. The belief that love meant sacrificing myself. Those were the wrong things, and losing them had made room for peace, for self-respect, for a life that actually felt like mine. But even with all that progress, there were still hard days. Days when I missed my parents. Not the people they'd become, but the people I'd thought they were. I missed the version of my mom who used to braid my hair when I was little. The version of my dad who used to carry me on his shoulders and call me his princess. I mourned those memories, even though I knew they were just that, memories. The reality was different. And I couldn't keep living in a fantasy. Around this time, I started hearing things through the grapevine. My parents had adjusted to their new apartment. My dad had taken a part-time job at a hardware store. My mom had joined a local community center and was volunteering. They were figuring it out. They were surviving. And I felt relieved. Not because I wanted them to struggle, but because it proved what I'd known all along. They didn't need me to save them. They just needed to take responsibility. I wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted the way things had ended, if they ever considered reaching out. But I didn't wait for answers to those questions. I'd spent too much of my life waiting for them to see me. I wasn't going to waste any more time. Then, one evening in early spring, something unexpected happened. I was cooking dinner when the doorbell rang. Lily ran to answer it, and I heard her gasp. "Grandpa!" My heart stopped. I wiped my hands and walked to the door. My father stood there, holding a small bouquet of flowers. He looked older than I remembered, tired. His hair was grayer, his shoulders were slumped. He didn't look like the confident, dismissive man who'd laughed at me months ago. He looked humbled. "Hi, Emma," he said quietly. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, staring at him. Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, can Grandpa come in?" I looked down at her hopeful face, then back at my father. "We talk?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Lily, go play with your brother." She hesitated, but then ran off. My father stepped inside and we stood in the entryway, the silence heavy between us. He handed me the flowers. "These are for you." I took them, but I didn't say thank you, not yet. He cleared his throat. "I know I don't have the right to just show up here. I know I hurt you, but I needed to see you. I needed to say I'm sorry." I felt something crack inside me, not in a bad way. In a way that felt like release. "Dad, I don't know what to say." He nodded. "You don't have to say anything, I just need you to listen, please." I gestured to the couch and we sat down. He stared at his hands the same way my mother had months ago. "Emma, losing the house was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Not because I cared about the house, but because it forced me to see the truth. Your mother and I, we've been living beyond our means for years. We spent money we didn't have. We made excuses. We blamed everyone but ourselves. And when you finally said no, I was furious. I thought you were being selfish. I thought you owed us." He paused, his voice breaking. "But you didn't owe us anything. We owed you. We owed you respect. We owed you gratitude. We owed you the same support you'd always given us. And we didn't give you any of that." I felt tears start to fall, but I didn't wipe them away. He looked up at me, his eyes red. "I've been working at the hardware store for 3 months now. It's not much, It's not glamorous, but it's taught me something. I forgot what it felt like to work for something, to earn something. I got so used to expecting things to just happen, to expecting you to fix everything, and I'm ashamed of that. I didn't interrupt. I let him talk. Your mother and I have been in counseling. We're trying to figure out how we got here, how we became the kind of parents who would treat their daughter the way we treated you. And the more we talk, the more I realize we took you for granted. We saw your strength and your kindness, and instead of appreciating it, we exploited it. He wiped his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to let me back into your life. I just needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I sat there, crying, feeling years of pain and anger and sadness all at once. Part of me wanted to hug him. Part of me wanted to tell him to leave. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of holding on to hurt. Dad, I said quietly. I appreciate you saying that, I really do. But I need you to understand something. I can't go back to the way things were. I can't be the daughter who fixes everything. I can't carry you anymore. He nodded. I know. And I'm not asking you to. I want to try to be better. To be the father you deserved. We sat there for a long time, neither of us sure what to say next. This wasn't a movie where everything was fixed with one apology. This was real life, messy, complicated, full of years of hurt that couldn't just disappear because someone said sorry, but it was a start. My father wiped his eyes and looked around the room. His gaze landed on a photo of Lily and Jacob on the mantel. They've grown so much, he said softly. I nodded. They have. He looked back at me. I missed so much, did I? I didn't sugarcoat it. Yeah, you did. He took a shaky breath. I know I can't get that time back, but is there any way I could see them, spend time with them? I don't want to be a stranger to my own grandchildren. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to protect my kids from the disappointment I'd felt, but another part of me knew that wasn't fair to them. They deserved the chance to have a relationship with their grandparents, even if it was different than before. Dad, if you want to be in their lives, you have to show up. Not just once. Not just when it's convenient, you have to be consistent, you have to be present. Can you do that? He nodded quickly. Yes, I promise. I held up a hand. Don't promise, just do it. I don't need words anymore, I need action. He looked at me with something that might have been respect. Okay, I understand. We made a plan. He'd come by once a week for dinner, just him at first. My mother and I still had a lot to work through, and I wasn't ready to see her yet. He agreed without argument. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. Emma, I know I don't deserve another chance, but thank you for giving me one anyway. I didn't say you're welcome. I just nodded, and he left. After he was gone, I sat on the couch and cried. Not because I was sad, not because I was angry, but because I was exhausted. Healing is exhausting. It's hard work. It requires you to relive pain while also trying to move forward, but it's worth it. At least, I hoped it was. The next few weeks were strange. My father came to dinner every Thursday. At first, the kids were shy around him. They remembered him, but they didn't really know him anymore. He'd been absent for months, and kids don't forget that. But slowly, he started to rebuild the connection. He asked them about school. He played board games with them. He listened when they talked. And I watched, cautiously hopeful, as they started to warm up to him again. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, my father and I sat at the kitchen table with tea. It had become a routine. After dinner, after the kids were asleep, we'd talk. Not about the past. Not yet, just about small things, life, work, the weather, but that night he brought it up. Emma, can I ask you something? I looked up. Sure. He hesitated. Do you think your mother and I can ever make this right? Or have we lost you for good? I set down my tea and thought about how to answer. Dad, I don't think it's about making it right. I think it's about moving forward. You can't undo what happened. You can't erase the hurt, but you can be different going forward. You can show me through your actions that you've changed. He nodded slowly. And have I shown you? I was honest. I don't know yet. It's only been a few weeks. I need time. He accepted that. I understand. Then he said something that surprised me. Your mother wants to see you. She's been too scared to come herself, but she misses you. She's been going to therapy too. She's trying. I felt a mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, curiosity. I'm not ready yet, Dad, he nodded. Okay, whenever you are, or if you're never ready, that's okay too. I appreciated that, the fact that he didn't push. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from my mother. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The letter was short. It said, Emma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to want me in your life, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see how badly we treated you. I see how we took advantage of your kindness. And I'm ashamed. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I became the kind of mother who would prioritize my comfort over my daughter's well-being. It's not an excuse, but I want to be better. Not for me, for you, for Lily and Jacob. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I love you. I always have. I just didn't know how to show it. Mom. I read the letter 3 times, and then I put it away. I wasn't ready to respond, but I didn't throw it away either. That felt like progress. Around this time, my life started to feel more stable than it had in years. I got a promotion at work. Not a huge one, but enough to give me a little breathing room financially. I was able to put money into savings. I even started thinking about the future, about maybe buying a small house one day, about giving my kids the stability I'd always wanted for them. Lily's choir had a recital and she asked if her grandpa could come. I said yes. My father sat next to me in the audience, and when Lily sang, I saw tears in his eyes. After the recital, he hugged her and told her how proud he was. And I saw, in that moment, a glimpse of the father I'd always wanted him to be. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on my porch and looked at the stars. I thought about how far I'd come, from the woman who couldn't say no to the woman who'd set boundaries and rebuilt her life, from the daughter who felt invisible to the mother who prioritized her children above everything else. It hadn't been easy. It had been one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it had been worth it. I still didn't know what the future held with my parents. I didn't know if my mother and I would ever fully reconcile. I didn't know if my father would continue to show up or if he'd slip back into old patterns, but I knew one thing for cert. I was no longer willing to sacrifice my peace for anyone, not even them. And that knowledge gave me a strength I'd never had before. A few days later, I decided to respond to my mother's letter. I didn't write a long letter back. I just wrote, Mom, I got your letter. I'm not ready to see you yet, but I'm willing to talk. If you want to call me, we can start there. Emma. I mailed it and waited. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my mother. I took a deep breath and answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice was shaky. Hi, Emma. Thank you for answering. We talked for an hour. It wasn't easy. There were long pauses. There were tears. There were moments when I wanted to hang up, but I didn't. Because I realized something important. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. In conversations that are hard. In apologies that are imperfect. In the decision to keep trying, even when it hurts. By the end of the call, I didn't feel like everything was fixed. But I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were moving in the right direction. And that was enough for now. The phone calls with my mother became a weekly thing. Every Sunday evening, we'd talk for about 30 minutes. Sometimes less. Sometimes more. It depended on how we both felt. At first, the conversations were stiff and surface level. We talked about the weather, about what she was doing at the community center, about Lily and Jacob's school activities. Safe topics, comfortable topics. But slowly, we started to go deeper. One Sunday, she said, Emma, I need to tell you something. And I need you to just listen. Can you do that? I hesitated. Okay, she took a breath. I've been thinking a lot about why your father and I treated you the way we did, and I think it's because we were scared. I frowned. Scared of what? Of losing control, of getting old, of not being needed anymore. You were always so capable, Emma, even as a kid. You didn't need us the way other children needed their parents. You figured things out on your own. You were independent. And I think, somewhere along the way, we started to resent that. I didn't know what to say. She continued. We convinced ourselves that if we could keep you helping us, keep you giving to us, then we'd still matter. We'd still be important. But we didn't realize we were pushing you away. We didn't realize we were hurting you. Her voice cracked. I'm not making excuses. I'm just trying to explain. Because I need you to know it was never about you not being enough. It was about us being too afraid to let you be your own person. I felt tears on my cheeks. Mom, I spent so many years thinking I wasn't good enough, thinking that if I just gave more, worked harder, did more, then you'd see me, then you'd love me. Oh, Emma, she said, crying now. I always loved you, I just didn't know how to show it without controlling you. That conversation stayed with me for days. It didn't erase the hurt. It didn't make everything okay. But it helped me understand. And understanding, I was learning, was a big part of healing. A few weeks later, my mother asked if she could come to the house. Not for dinner, not to see the kids yet, just to see me. I agreed, but I was nervous. When she arrived, she looked different. Her hair was shorter, she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked smaller, older, more vulnerable than I remembered. We sat in the living room, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Thank you for letting me come." I nodded. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I wanted to give you this." I took it, confused. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a check for $5,000. I looked at her stunned. "Mom, what is this?" "It's money we owed you. It's not everything, I know that, but it's a start. Your father and I have been saving. We've been cutting back on expenses. And we wanted to give you something back. Not because we're expecting anything in return, but because it's the right thing to do." I stared at the check, feeling a swirl of emotions. Part of me wanted to refuse it. Part of me wanted to prove I didn't need it. But another part of me knew that accepting it wasn't about the money. It was about them taking responsibility. "Thank you," I said quietly. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I also want to say I'm proud of you, Emma. I know I never said that before, but I am. You're an incredible mother. You're strong and kind and brave. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't enough." I broke down then. I cried in a way I hadn't let myself cry in months, and my mother held me. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't try to explain it away. She just held me and let me cry. When I finally calmed down, she pulled back and looked at me. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to be in your life if you'll let me, not the way I was before, but as someone who supports you, who respects you, who sees you." I took a shaky breath. "I want that too, Mom, but I need you to understand that things are different now. I have boundaries, I have limits, and if you cross them, I won't hesitate to walk away again." She nodded. "I understand, and I'll respect them, I promise." Over the next few months, my mother slowly became a part of my life again. She started coming to family dinners with my father. She played with the kids. She helped with small things like picking up groceries or watching the kids for an hour if I had an appointment. But she never overstepped. She never assumed, she always asked first. And that made all the difference. One evening after dinner, Lily climbed into my mother's lap and said, "Grandma, I missed you." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "I missed you too, sweetheart." Watching them together, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't the relationship I'd had with my parents before. It was something new, something healthier, something built on respect instead of obligation. Around this time, I also started reconnecting with other parts of my life that I'd neglected. I joined a book club. I started going to yoga classes. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. I was rediscovering who I was outside of being a mother, a daughter, an employee. I was just Emma, and I liked her. One day, Sarah from work asked me, "How do you do it? How do you stay so calm and strong after everything you've been through?" I thought about it. I don't think I'm always calm or always strong. I think I just decided that my peace mattered more than other people's approval, and once I made that decision, everything else got easier. She nodded thoughtfully. "I need to learn how to do that." I smiled. "You will, when you're ready." That conversation reminded me of how far I'd come. A year ago, I would have never said my peace mattered. I would have prioritized everyone else. But now I knew better. Then, one Saturday afternoon, something unexpected happened. I was at the park with Lily and Jacob when I ran into my cousin, Amanda. The same cousin who'd sent me that angry text months ago about disappointing the family. She saw me and hesitated. I could see the conflict on her face. But then she walked over. "Hi, Emma," I nodded. "Hi, Amanda." She glanced at the kids, then back at me. "Can we talk, just for a minute?" I told the kids to stay where I could see them, and Amanda and I walked a few feet away. She took a breath. I owe you an apology. I said some really harsh things to you, and I didn't understand the full situation. I crossed my arms. What changed? She looked uncomfortable. My mom told me what Uncle Greg said about how your dad borrowed money from him years ago and never paid it back. And I started asking questions. And I realized your parents have a history of this, of taking from people and then cutting them off when they stop giving. She paused. I'm sorry I judged you. You were right to set boundaries. I didn't know what to say. I'd spent so long being the villain in my family's story that hearing someone validate me felt surreal. Thank you, I finally said. She nodded. I hope we can stay in touch. I miss you. I smiled. I'd like that. As she walked away, I felt another piece of my life fall back into place. Not everyone would understand. Not everyone would support me, but the people who mattered, they'd see the truth eventually. And that was enough. A year passed. A full year since I'd walked out of my parents' house and said those 4 words that changed everything. Then pay your mortgage. Looking back now, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. The one who said yes to everything. The one who carried weight that wasn't hers to carry. The one who believed love meant self-sacrifice. I wasn't that woman anymore. I'd become someone stronger. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who understood that boundaries weren't walls. They were bridges to healthier relationships. My life had transformed in ways I never imagined. My relationship with my parents wasn't perfect, but it was real. My father still came to dinner every Thursday. He'd gotten promoted at the hardware store and was genuinely proud of the work he was doing. He talked about it with a light in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. My mother had become one of my biggest supporters. She watched the kids when I needed her, but she never assumed. She always asked. She respected my time, my decisions, my space. And slowly we were rebuilding trust. One evening, as we sat on the porch after dinner, she said, "Emma, I want you to know something. Losing that house was the best thing that ever happened to us." I looked at her surprised. She nodded. I mean it. It forced us to face reality. It forced us to take responsibility. And it brought us back to what really matters. Not things, not status, but family. Real family, built on love, not obligation. I felt tears sting my eyes. I'm glad you see it that way, Mom. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm glad you had the courage to say no, because if you hadn't, we'd still be pretending. We'd still be living a lie, and we would have lost you for good. That moment felt like closure, like the final piece of healing I'd been waiting for. The kids were thriving. Lily was in middle school now, confident and happy. Jacob was excelling in sports and had a group of close friends. They had a relationship with their grandparents, but it was healthy, balanced, built on presence, not guilt. One day, Jacob asked me, "Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa come around for a while?" I thought about how to answer. I wanted to be honest, but age-appropriate. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes they need time to learn and grow. But the important thing is that they're here now, and they love you very much. He nodded, satisfied with that answer. Kids are resilient. They don't need perfection. They just need honesty and love. My career had also grown. I'd been promoted again and was now managing a team at the school. I was making enough money to finally buy a small house. Nothing fancy, just a cozy 3-bedroom with a backyard where the kids could play. The day we moved in, I stood in the living room and cried. Not from sadness, from pride. I'd done this, by myself, without relying on anyone, without sacrificing my boundaries. I'd built a life I was proud of. Mrs. Patterson came over with a housewarming gift, a beautiful plant and a card that said, "For new beginnings." I hugged her tight. "Thank you for everything," she smiled. "You did this, Emma. All I did was remind you that you could." My parents came over to see the new house. My father helped me hang pictures. My mother brought homemade cookies. We sat in the backyard, watching the kids play, and it felt peaceful. My father looked at me and said, "I'm proud of you, Emma. I know I didn't say it enough before, but I am." I smiled. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." He nodded. "You taught me something important. You taught me that love isn't about taking, it's about giving, and I'm sorry it took me so long to learn that." I reached over and hugged him. "I'm just glad you did." That evening, after everyone had left and the kids were asleep, I sat on my porch and reflected on the journey. It hadn't been easy. There were days I wanted to give up, days I questioned everything, days I felt so alone I didn't think I'd make it through, but I had. And not only had I survived, I'd thrived. I thought about all the people who'd supported me along the way. Sarah, who listened without judgment. Mrs. Patterson, who helped without asking for anything in return. Jennifer, who validated me when I needed it most. Uncle Greg, who reminded me I wasn't crazy. My therapist, who helped me see my worth. And even my parents, who eventually did the hard work of change. I realized that healing isn't linear, it's messy. It's full of setbacks and breakthroughs. It requires patience, grace, and the willingness to keep showing up, even when it's hard, but it's worth it. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local women's group about setting boundaries. I was nervous, but I agreed. Standing in front of a room full of women, I shared my story. I talked about the guilt, the fear, the loneliness. But I also talked about the freedom, the peace, the strength. When I finished, a woman in the back raised her hand. How did you know when it was time to say no? I thought about that. I think you always know, deep down, but it's scary to act on it because we're afraid of what we'll lose. The truth is, you will lose things. You might lose relationships. You might lose people's approval. But what you gain, your peace, your self-respect, your freedom, that's worth more than anything you'll lose. The room was silent. And then one by one, women started nodding. Some were crying. After the talk, several women came up to me and shared their own stories. Stories of giving too much, of feeling unseen, of struggling to set boundaries. And I realized that my story wasn't just mine. It was universal. So many people, especially women, are taught that love means self-sacrifice. That saying no is selfish. That boundaries are mean. But that's not true. Boundaries are love. They're the way we protect our peace while still caring for others. They're the way we teach people how to treat us. They're the way we honor ourselves. As the months continued, I found myself thinking less about the past and more about the future. I started dreaming again. Not just surviving, but thriving. I enrolled in a course to get my master's degree. I wanted to advance in my career, to keep growing, to keep becoming the best version of myself. Lily asked me one day, "Mom, why are you going back to school?" I smiled. "Because I want to show you and Jacob that it's never too late to chase your dreams, and I want to keep learning and growing." She grinned. "That's cool, Mom." One evening, as I was tucking Jacob into bed, he said, "Mom, you're the strongest person I know." I kissed his forehead. "Thank you, baby. But you know what? You and Lily make me strong." He smiled and closed his eyes, and in that moment I realized something profound. I'd spent so much of my life trying to be strong for other people, trying to hold everything together, trying to prove my worth, but real strength wasn't about how much I could carry. It was about knowing when to put things down. It was about protecting my peace. It was about choosing myself even when it was hard. The next Sunday, during my weekly call with my mother, she said, "Emma, I've been thinking about writing a letter to Lily and Jacob, for when they're older, to tell them how proud I am of their mother, and to apologize for not being the grandmother they deserved when they were younger. Do you think that's a good idea?" I felt warmth spread through my chest. "I think that's a beautiful idea, Mom." She paused. "Do you think they'll forgive me?" I smiled. "I think they already have. Kids are good at that. They live in the present, but I think they'll appreciate the letter one day." That conversation reminded me that healing isn't just for me, it's for everyone involved. My parents were healing too. They were growing. They were becoming the people they should have been all along. And I was proud of them for that. As I sat on my porch that night, looking at the stars, I thought about the moment that started it all. The moment my father laughed and said, "We're not your nannies." The moment I finally found my voice and said, "Then pay your mortgage." That moment had felt like an ending, like I was losing everything, but it wasn't an ending, it was a beginning, the beginning of me finding myself, the beginning of me setting boundaries, the beginning of me choosing my own life. And now, a year later, I could see the full picture. I hadn't lost my parents. I'd found them, the real them. Not the people they pretended to be, but the people they actually were. And I'd found myself too. The woman who wouldn't settle for less than she deserved. The mother who would protect her children's peace above all else. The person who knew that love didn't mean losing yourself, it meant honoring yourself while caring for others. I thought about all the people out there who might be in the same situation I was, carrying weight that isn't theirs, saying yes when they want to say no, feeling guilty for having boundaries. And I wanted to tell them, it's okay to say no. It's okay to choose yourself. It's okay to walk away from relationships that hurt you, even if they're family. Because you deserve peace, you deserve respect, you deserve love that doesn't cost you your soul. And if people can't give you that, it's okay to let them go. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with clarity and grace. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set a boundary, for yourself, and for them. As I looked up at the stars, I whispered a quiet thank you. To the universe, to God, to whatever force had given me the strength to stand up for myself. And I made a promise. I promised myself that I would never again sacrifice my peace for someone else's comfort. I promised my children that I would always show them what healthy love looks like. And I promised the woman I used to be that I would honor her journey by never going back to who she was, because she deserved better. And so do I. The end.